The briefing room on the orbiting human starship was silent, the kind of silence that came with tension and fear. Captain Riley stood at the front, his expression grim as he addressed the squad. On the holographic table before him, an image of a massive alien figure rotated slowly, its features intimidating yet oddly majestic. "This," Riley began, "is an Atheran, one of the last surviving members of a species wiped out during the Galactic Wars. It stands over 8 feet tall, stronger than any human, and equipped with a unique ability we still don't fully understand. And it needs our help." The room buzzed with murmurs. John Jack Cade, a soldier known for his reckless bravery, leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "Help. From us. That thing could squash us with one hand." Riley's gaze hardened. "That thing, Cade, has vital information about an artifact capable of ending the war. It won't talk to anyone, not unless we can bond with it." "Bond?" another soldier asked. "What does that even mean?" Riley hesitated, then sighed. "The Atherans have a ritualistic process of forming trust. It's not just about words, it's a mental and physical connection. They call it the bond. It's risky, and it's permanent." The murmurs grew louder. Permanent. No one wanted to volunteer for something that could change their lives forever, let alone involve an 8-foot alien with unknown powers. Jack sat up, his curiosity piqued. "What happens if we don't do it?" Riley turned to the hologram, the glowing image of the Atheran spinning slowly. "If we don't, we lose our only chance to retrieve the artifact. And without it, humanity has no shot at surviving this war." The room fell silent again. The weight of Riley's words hung heavily in the air. Jack looked around at his squad mates, seasoned soldiers who could handle any battlefield, but none of them were moving. The thought of bonding with an alien, one that could crush them with a flick of its hand, was too much. "I'll do it," Jack said suddenly, his voice cutting through the silence. All eyes turned to him. Riley raised an eyebrow. "Cade, this isn't a joke." "I'm not joking," Jack replied, standing up. "You need someone to do it, right? Someone to bond with the big guy and get that artifact." "Fine. I'll do it." Riley studied him for a moment, then nodded. "You understand the risks." "I get it," Jack said, shrugging. "But if this bond thing is what we need to win, I'm not about to sit back and let someone else take the hit." The room erupted in whispers as Riley dismissed the squad. Jack stayed behind, feeling a mixture of pride and apprehension. He didn't know what bonding with an alien would entail, but he'd never backed down from a challenge before. As he made his way to the containment area where the Atheran was kept, Jack couldn't shake the thought. What had he just gotten himself into? Jack entered the containment chamber, his footsteps echoing on the metallic floor. The room was dimly lit, with faint blue lights tracing the edges of the walls. At the center stood the Atheran, towering at 8 feet tall. Its broad shoulders and muscular frame seemed carved from stone, but its skin shimmered with a faint, silvery glow that gave it an almost ethereal appearance. It wasn't just big, it was intimidating. The Atheran turned its head toward him, its piercing amber eyes locking onto Jack's. For a moment, neither moved. Jack could feel the weight of the creature's gaze, as if it were assessing his very soul. "You're bigger up close," Jack muttered, breaking the silence. The Atheran tilted its head slightly, the movement deliberate and slow. Then it spoke. Its voice was deep and resonant, echoing with a strange, otherworldly cadence. "You are the one who has come to bond." Jack blinked, taken aback by how well it spoke his language. "Yeah, that's me. Jack Cade. I guess you could call me the brave, or foolish, volunteer." The Atheran's eyes narrowed slightly. Bravery and foolishness are often two sides of the same coin. Jack couldn't help but smirk. "You're not wrong." The alien stepped forward, and Jack instinctively tensed. Up close, the sheer size of it was overwhelming. The Atheran noticed his reaction and paused. "Do not fear me, human. The bond cannot be formed with fear. Jack straightened, determined not to show weakness. I'm not afraid, just cautious. The Atheran gave a low hum, something between a chuckle and a growl. Caution is wise. The bond is not a simple act. It is a merging of minds and wills. You will see my memories, my pain, my truths, and I will see yours. Jack's smirk faltered. Wait, you mean I'll share my thoughts with you? The Atheran nodded. Your secrets will be open to me, as mine will be to you. This is the only way trust is forged. Jack hesitated, his mind racing. He wasn't sure how he felt about an alien rummaging through his memories, but he'd already come this far. All right, he said finally. What do I have to do? The Atheran raised a massive hand, its palm glowing faintly with golden light. You must touch my palm and remain still. The bond will begin, and there will be no turning back. Jack stared at the glowing hand, his pulse quickening. He could feel the weight of his decision pressing down on him. If he walked away now, humanity might lose its chance at survival. But if he went through with this, his life might never be the same. Taking a deep breath, Jack stepped forward and placed his hand against the Atheran's. The alien skin was warm and surprisingly smooth. The moment their palms met, a surge of energy shot through Jack, and his vision blurred. Let it begin, the Atheran said, its voice echoing in Jack's mind. And then, everything went dark. Jack's world turned into a swirling void of light and shadow. He felt weightless, as if floating through a vast ocean of energy. Around him, shapes began to form, images, emotions, and sounds that didn't belong to him. They were alien, strange, and overwhelming. At first, it was chaos. Fragments of memories flashed in his mind. A planet bathed in golden light, towering spires reaching into a violet sky, and a sense of pride and unity unlike anything Jack had ever felt. He saw the Atheran's people, strong and majestic, standing together as a community. But the vision shifted, darkening. The golden light turned to flames, and screams filled the air. Jack saw the Atheran's fighting, their powerful forms surrounded by shadowy figures wielding advanced weapons. He felt the Atheran's anguish, a deep sorrow that pierced his chest like a dagger. The pain was almost unbearable. Suddenly, Jack heard the Atheran's voice in his mind. This was our fall. My people destroyed. Our cities turned to ash. I am the last. Jack gasped, clutching his head. The emotions were too raw, too intense. This is what you've been carrying all this time. Yes, the voice replied. The bond shares all. Now show me your truths, human. Before Jack could protest, the flood of alien memories receded, replaced by flashes of his own past. He saw himself as a child, running through the fields of Earth, his laughter echoing in the air. He saw his first day in the military, the pride of wearing the uniform, and the camaraderie of his squad. But then came the darker moments. He relived the day he lost his closest friend in battle, the helplessness of watching someone he cared about slip away. He felt the weight of decisions he'd made, the guilt of those he couldn't save. His memories were laid bare, raw and unfiltered, for the Atheran to see. You carry much pain, the Atheran's voice said, softer now. And yet, you endure. Why? Jack hesitated, searching for an answer. Because I have to, he said finally. Because giving up means letting everyone else down. And I can't do that. The void around them began to settle, the swirling lights fading into a calm, golden glow. Jack felt the Atheran's presence in his mind, not as an intruder, but as a steady, reassuring force. You are stronger than I expected, the Atheran said. Your resilience is admirable. Jack opened his eyes, finding himself back in the containment chamber. His hand was still pressed against the Atheran's, but now he felt something different. A connection, a bond that went beyond words. The Atheran looked down at him, its amber eyes filled with something that might have been respect. The bond is complete. We are. 1. Jack stepped back, his breath shaky but steady. What now? Now, the Atheron said, its voice firm, we prepare for what lies ahead. Together, Jack sat in the briefing room, his head spinning from the experience. Bonding with the Atheron had left him feeling exposed, but also strangely empowered. He could still feel the faint connection in the back of his mind, like a quiet presence watching and waiting. The Atheron stood across the room, its massive form looming silently. It was no longer just a towering alien. It was something more. Jack could sense its emotions now, faint but clear. There was a calmness to it, but also a lingering sadness, an undercurrent of loss that Jack couldn't ignore. Captain Riley entered, breaking the tension. He eyed the two of them carefully. Well, Cade, looks like you survived. That's more than most would have managed. Jack smirked, leaning back in his chair. Yeah, well, I guess I'm full of surprises. Riley turned to the Atheron. And you, warrior, are you satisfied with the bond? The Atheron inclined its head slightly. The human has proven acceptable. His strength of will is greater than I anticipated. Jack snorted. Thanks, I guess. Riley cleared his throat. All right, enough banter. Here's the situation. The artifact we need is located on an abandoned Atheron stronghold, an old outpost hidden deep in enemy-controlled territory. Without it, our chances of survival in this war are slim. The Atheron's expression darkened. The stronghold was once a place of honor. Now, it is likely desecrated by those who destroyed my people. Riley nodded, which is why you two are the only ones who can retrieve it. The bond gives you an edge, mutual trust. Cade, you're our best shot at navigating this mission with the Atheron. Together, you'll have to infiltrate the stronghold, locate the artifact, and get out before anyone notices. Jack leaned forward, frowning. And what happens if someone does notice? Riley's face hardened. Then you'll need to rely on that bond of yours to survive. Jack exchanged a glance with the Atheron, who remained stoic. For the first time, Jack realized the enormity of the task ahead. This wasn't just about trust. It was about putting their lives in each other's hands. Later, as they prepared for the mission, Jack couldn't help but break the silence. So, what exactly is this artifact? Some kind of weapon. The Atheron paused, turning to face him. It is not a weapon, human. It is a key, a source of knowledge and power my people guarded for centuries. If it falls into the wrong hands, the consequences could be catastrophic. Jack whistled softly. No pressure, then. The Atheron's eyes glowed faintly as it regarded him. You jest, but the stakes are real. Do not fail, human. The survival of many depends on our success. Jack grinned despite himself. No pressure, he repeated, more to himself than to the Atheron. As they boarded the dropship, the weight of the mission pressed down on Jack. But deep down, he felt something else too, a growing sense of determination. For better or worse, they were in this together. The dropship sliced through the atmosphere, its engines humming steadily. Jack gripped the straps of his harness as he stared out of the window. The planet below was barren and lifeless, its surface marred by ancient craters and jagged cliffs. Somewhere down there was the Atheron stronghold, a relic of a once great civilization. The Atheron sat across from him, silent and composed, its amber eyes fixed ahead. Jack could feel the faint bond between them, a steady presence in his mind. It wasn't intrusive, but it reminded him that he wasn't alone. The ship's pilot announced their approach, and the cabin lights dimmed. Jack glanced at the Atheron. So, got any advice for sneaking into your old base? The Atheron turned its gaze to him. The stronghold will be heavily guarded. While it was abandoned after my people's fall, those who destroyed us likely claimed it. They will not welcome intruders. Figured as much, Jack muttered, checking his gear. And this artifact, where exactly are we supposed to find it? In the central chamber, the Atheron replied. It is hidden beneath the throne of memory, a seat of great significance to my people. The artifact's energy will guide us. Great, Jack said with a half smile. Follow the glowing treasure. Classic adventure stuff. The Atheron didn't respond, but Jack felt a flicker of amusement through the bond. He smirked. At least the big guy had a sense of humor buried under all that seriousness. The ship landed quietly on the edge of the stronghold's perimeter. Jack and the Atheron disembarked, their boots crunching against the rocky terrain. The stronghold loomed in the distance, its spires dark against the crimson sky. It was an imposing structure, both ancient and alien, with jagged architecture that seemed to defy gravity. As they approached, Jack spotted movement. Figures in sleek black armor patrolled the perimeter, their weapons glowing faintly with energy. "Looks like we've got company," he whispered. The Atheron nodded. "They are not of my kind. These are scavengers, looters who desecrate what they do not understand." "Yeah, well, they've got guns, so let's not get caught," Jack said, ducking behind a boulder. They moved silently through the shadows, avoiding the patrols. Jack marveled at the Atheron's agility despite its size. It moved with precision, its every step calculated. The bond between them made it easier to coordinate, as if they could sense each other's intentions without speaking. Finally, they reached the entrance, a massive ornate door covered in ancient glyphs. The Atheron placed its hand on the surface, and the glyphs began to glow faintly. "This way," it said, stepping inside. The interior of the stronghold was vast and eerie, its walls lined with glowing symbols and forgotten relics. Jack couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. "Your people really knew how to build a place," he said softly. The Atheron didn't reply, but Jack sensed a flicker of pride through the bond. As they ventured deeper, the air grew heavier, charged with an unseen energy. Jack's grip tightened on his weapon. He could feel it. The artifact was close, but so were the dangers that awaited them. The central chamber of the stronghold was nothing short of awe-inspiring. The ceiling soared high above, etched with glowing glyphs that pulsed faintly, casting an otherworldly light across the room. At the center stood the throne of memory, a massive ornate seat carved from a dark crystalline material. It radiated a soft, golden energy that seemed to hum in Jack's chest. The Atheron stepped forward, its gaze fixed on the throne. "This is where my ancestors sat to guide our people. The artifact lies beneath it." Jack followed, his footsteps echoing in the vast chamber. "So, how do we get it out? I don't see any levers or switches." The Atheron approached the throne, placing its massive hand on the armrest. The glyphs on the throne began to glow brighter, responding to its touch. "The throne recognizes only those of my bloodline. It will reveal the artifact to me." "Convenient," Jack muttered, keeping his weapon at the ready. He couldn't shake the feeling they weren't alone. As the Atheron concentrated, the throne began to shift. The crystalline seats split apart, revealing a small compartment beneath. Inside was the artifact, a sphere of glowing energy, pulsating with life. It floated gently above the throne's base, surrounded by faint strands of light that seemed to ripple like water. "There it is," Jack said, his voice filled with awe. "Looks important." "It is," the Atheron replied, carefully reaching for the sphere. "This contains the knowledge of my people. It is the key to unlocking their wisdom and power." As soon as the Atheron touched the artifact, the ground beneath them trembled. Jack stumbled, gripping his weapon tightly. Is this supposed to happen?" "No," the Atheron said sharply. Its amber eyes scanned the chamber. "We are not alone." As if on cue, a loud crash echoed through the hall. The ornate doors burst open, and scavengers poured in, their weapons aimed and ready. Jack and the Atheron spun around, standing back to back instinctively. "Well, I guess they don't want us taking their prize," Jack quipped, aiming his blaster. The Atheron held the artifact protectively, its other hand glowing faintly with energy. "They cannot be allowed to take this. Prepare yourself, human." The scavengers opened fire, bolts of energy streaking through the air. Jack dove behind a nearby pillar, returning fire with precision. "I didn't sign up for this much excitement," he shouted. The Atheron unleashed a wave of golden energy, sending several scavengers flying. Its movements were precise and fluid, a combination of brute strength and grace. Jack couldn't help but marvel at its prowess, even as he fought to keep up. The battle raged on, the chamber filled with the sounds of combat. Jack and the Atheron fought as one, their bond allowing them to anticipate each other's moves. For the first time, Jack understood the depth of their connection. It wasn't just about trust, it was about unity. As the last scavenger fell, Jack leaned against a pillar, panting. "Well, that was fun. Let's not do it again." The Atheron nodded, its expression calm but firm. "We must leave. More will come." Clutching the artifact, the two made their way toward the exit, ready to face whatever dangers awaited them. The stronghold trembled as alarms blared, their echoes bouncing off the ancient walls. Jack and the Atheron sprinted through the dark corridors, the glowing artifact cradled in the alien's massive hands. The pulsating energy of the sphere cast eerie shadows around them, making the ancient glyphs on the walls seem alive. "Do these places always self-destruct when you grab something important?" Jack shouted, dodging a falling piece of debris. The Atheron didn't slow down, its long strides outpacing Jack's. This reaction was triggered by the scavengers. They sought to destroy what they could not steal. "Wonderful," Jack muttered, pushing himself to keep up. "You'd think they'd have better hobbies." Behind them, the sound of heavy footsteps and shouted commands grew louder. More scavengers were on their tail, determined to stop their escape. "We're being followed," Jack called out, glancing over his shoulder. "They really don't know when to quit." The Atheron stopped abruptly and turned to face the pursuing enemies. "Go ahead, human. I will deal with them." Jack skidded to a halt, his heart racing. "What? No way. You're not doing this alone." The Atheron's amber eyes softened, a rare flicker of emotion crossing its face. "The artifact must reach safety. I will hold them off." Jack clenched his jaw. Every instinct screamed at him to argue, but the look in the Atheron's eyes told him there was no time. "Fine," he said, gripping his weapon tightly. "But you better survive this, big guy. We've still got a bond, remember?" The Atheron nodded. "Go, human. Fulfill your purpose." Reluctantly, Jack turned and ran, the sound of the Atheron's battle cries echoing behind him. He darted through the corridors, following the faint blue lights that led to the exit. The artifact's glow seemed to guide him, as if it understood the urgency of their mission. Bursting out into the open air, Jack spotted the dropship hovering just beyond the perimeter. The pilot waved him forward, shouting over the roar of the engines. "Come on, Cade. We're running out of time." Jack sprinted across the rocky terrain, clutching his weapon as debris rained down around him. He leaped onto the ship's ramp, gasping for breath, as the doors began to close. "Where's the Atheron?" the pilot asked, his tone sharp. Jack looked back, his chest tightening. He wanted to say something, but before he could, a massive figure emerged from the stronghold's smoke-filled entrance. The Atheron was battered but standing tall, its glowing amber eyes scanning the ship. "Move it," Jack shouted, reaching out a hand. The Atheron sprinted toward the ship, leaping onto the ramp just as it began to lift off. The force of the jump shook the cabin, but the alien landed gracefully, clutching the artifact tightly. "You made it," Jack said, a grin breaking across his face. The Atheron gave a slow nod. "I told you, we are one." As the ship ascended, the stronghold collapsed behind them, swallowed by fire and smoke. Jack slumped against the wall, exhausted but alive. Beside him, the Atheron cradled the artifact, its glow a symbol of hope. "Guess we pulled it off," Jack said, his voice weary but satisfied. The Atheron turned to him, its expression unreadable. "This is only the beginning, human. The bond will guide us to greater challenges." Jack smirked. "Bring it on, big guy." I'm ready." As the dropship soared into the stars, Jack couldn't help but feel a strange sense of pride. Against all odds, they had succeeded, together. The bond was no longer just a necessity. It was a partnership, forged in fire and unbreakable. The end.